special meeting of the HERE Commission to order at 6:39 p.m.
Oh my God, 6:36. That's okay.
6:36 p.m. We'll call this special meeting of the HERE Commission to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which is going to be led by Lucy Jacobian.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. If I can have everyone place your right hands over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
of the United States of America
to America
And
and
to
to the republic
and the republic
for which it stands,
for
one
which it
nation,
stands, one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Daniel, would you please call the roll?
Chair Jennings Nunez,
Here.
Vice Chair Herrera,
You're on mute.
Chair Jennings Nunez,
Here.
Danielle, would you mind going back to Commissioner Borja? I think you may have been on mute accidentally.
okay. Commissioner Borja,
Present.
Commissioner Brenha,
Here.
Commissioner Fitzsimmons, Commissioner Fitzsimmons,
Fairly sure she's here. I think she may just be having some audio.
are we allowed to move forward? Commissioner Godo,
Here.
Commissioner Khan.
Here.
Thank you, Danielle. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda order. So are there any objections to the agenda order?
No.
Hearing none, the agenda order is approved. I'm sorry, hearing none, the agenda order is approved. So we'll go now to approval of the minutes. We actually have two sets of minutes to approve from April 28th and from our meeting on May 12th, I think, is that correct? On May 12th? Can we approve both of those sets of minutes at once, or do we need to take them by themselves? Both at once.
Can approve them both at one time with one motion.
I do just have a question about something on the May 12th minutes. Can I ask about that? And it's more of a terminology. Under acknowledgement, there is a sentence that says Chair Jennings acknowledged AAPI and also acknowledged Ramadan. And I just want to double check with Rick Khan that would be the correct way that we want to say that acknowledgement, because we were really acknowledging a specific part of that day.
We might add Eid or the festival, Ramadan festival, because Ramadan is a whole month's routine. So that particular day was the festival day. So we can add Ramadan festival to it, if that's what makes a difference there. I'd like that better.
Thank you. Is there any other corrections or questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes for April 28th and May 12th with the one correction?
Yes, I propose it, or I
Move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. And the second came from
Me, Commissioner Brenha.
Commissioner Brown. Thank you. Daniel, please take the vote.
Commissioner Borja,
Yes, I approve.
Commissioner Brenha,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitzsimmons,
Aye.
Commissioner Godo, Commissioner Godo?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Khan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Herrera? And Chair Jennings Nunez?
Aye.
Motion passed by the vote of 6 ayes and 0 nays.
Me too.
And Chair Jennings, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we'll just show for the record that Commissioner Fitzsimmons showed up right after the roll call.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Matthew?
Okay. Yep. So tonight's meeting is live streamed on cable channel 3 and our online platforms. Please email all public comments to Matthew Morales Stevens, mmoralesstevens@sgch.org, no later than the time the item is considered by the commission tonight. Comments will be read for up to 3 minutes each. Comments received after the end of the public comment section will be forwarded to the commission after the meeting. If you wish to be added to the distribution list to receive commission agendas, please email your request to mmoralesstevens@sgch.org.
Thank you. So now is the time for public comment. So this is the time set aside for members of the public to address the HERE Commission on items of interest that are not on the agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the HERE Commission. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the HERE Commission cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. Matthew, do we have any public comments for tonight's meeting?
We do. We have one general public comment and 2 that I will bring up at the annual work plan discussion. Right. So the first one reads, hello, this is a copy of a letter I recently sent in regards to a recent article about a Tongva leader on KPCC who I personally had dealing with and turned out to not be what she claimed. Should you wish to talk about this, please contact me. Dear editor, I am sending this letter in regards to the airing of an article that included hurtful and erroneous information about the indigenous people of this area. The indigenous people of the greater Los Angeles basin and surrounding areas have been called the Gabrielino since they were the laborers who built the mission San Gabriel. Since this period, the indigenous people have experienced the most horrific atrocities. They were removed from their ancestral lands, and there were attempts to eradicate their culture, history, language, and identity as a people. Today, they continue to experience atrocities by individuals who are attempting once again to steal their birthright, to manipulate the public for their own self-gain by wrongly using a modified village name to identify the original people. During mission times, late 18th century, indigenous people were collected by the Spanish from many villages in what are now part of Los Angeles County, Orange County, Ventura County, the greater Southwest, and Mexico. Even though these people had different cultures and spoke different languages, as time passed, they melted into a community. The original peoples that inhabited the greater LA area historically referred to themselves by their village names. They were named by the Spanish the Quichureños, and by other surrounding indigenous peoples, the Kish, from the Kish word for the willow homes they built. Many tribes today are returning to their original names, though through genealogical and historical documents, it has been established that the members of the Kish Nation are direct descendants of the indigenous people from the greater Los Angeles area. In 1994, the California Joint Assembly introduced a resolution to recognize the Gabrielino as the designated tribe of the greater Los Angeles basin. As it stands, the Gabrielino, the lineal descendants of the Quichureños, as described by the Spanish prior to the construction of the mission and the subsequent use of the term, are the only ones recognized by the state, and not the groups calling themselves the Tongva. The term Tongva has been added to the 1994 resolution before coming to a vote. However, the state Senate rejected the term because there was no credible foundation for its inclusion and use. 3 subsequent legislative bills that included the name Tongva were submitted and ultimately canceled without clearing committee discussion. In addition, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848, and the Treaty of Castaic Texon, etc., 1851, do not include the tribal name of Tonga. While not yet officially listed by the Department of Interior on the list of federally recognized tribes, the Gabrielino, now referred to as the Kish Nation, are officially recognized by several state and federal agencies, including the Native American Heritage Commission, Environmental Protection Agency, and the Army Corps of Engineers, as the true lineal descendants of the original people. If one researches the term Tongva, one will find no historical or ethnographic reference to any tribe, band, or group called Tongva. The Tongva tribe and tribal name were not created until 1992, when the term was erroneously created with the best of intentions to save the Kurugna Springs at Uni High School in Los Angeles. The term Tongva and the individuals who created and continue to use the term are not the descendants of the Kish of the greater Los Angeles basin and surrounding areas. The creation and use of this name and the co-opting of the ingenuity of the true descendant has created confusion and caused harm, whether intentional or not. The Gabrielino Kish Nation people are alive and well in their traditional homeland. The lengthy and deeply rich history is an important part of the California story. If they are to be properly honored and respected, we must begin by acknowledging their existence, their identity, their origins, and their authenticity. Then the writer included the contact information for the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians. Respectfully, Mary A. Pritchard Parker, RPA, Adjunct Professor of Anthropology and Archaeology, Pasadena City College Chair, Loomis Legacy League Chair, Friends of the Southwest Museum President, and Milford Archaeology Research Institute. We have no further general public comment.
Thank you, Matthew. So the next item, please, will be the discussion and approval of our annual work plan. So during this time, the commission will discuss the annual work plan that we will present to the City Council for review at the June 15th council meeting.
Okay, so just as a quick reminder, staff reviewed the items or comments made during the last special commission meeting and revised the work plan accordingly. It was included in the agenda packet. During the meeting tonight, you'll have the ability to make modifications as you see fit, add some items as well, and then we will submit the final document for approval or for review to City Council on the June 15th City Council meeting. One last reminder, in order to ensure that everyone is in agreement with the items that are in the annual work plan, I'm hoping that we can start from the top and then work our way down item by item. That way, if there is any objection to the inclusion of any of the items that are currently listed on the work plan, that can be specifically raised. And then there'll be some clear direction for staff as to what that annual work plan will exactly look like to be presented to council.
Thank you, Matthew. So now we're going to begin by reviewing the work plan that was included in the agenda.
In the package.
You all were able to all receive that and had a moment to review it. So as Matthew suggested, we'll start from the top and work our way down. And it's going to just indicate that you want to speak as opposed to kind of going to each person for in each item. We'll kind of make it open. So, the work plan begins with an overview and then the purpose of the commission, the scope of the commission that comes straight from the ordinance that created the HERE Commission. Then it goes on to the purpose of the annual work plan. And I'm just reading this for those who may be listening. The annual work plan includes current and future projects, programs, and activities of the HERE Commission. It is intended as a summary of the Commission's progress towards achieving its purpose. And then the proposed 2021 work plan begins with a section on community engagement. Maybe I can ask Commissioner Borja if she would maybe lead this discussion part.
On the community engagement part.
Mm-hmm.
So This is working with the Community Services Department to determine new ways of engaging and educating the community through events. Some examples include culturally inclusive movie night and an event to celebrate Native American Heritage Month, specifically the Tonga tribe. On B, one guest speaker educational program per month during the regular commission meetings, no more than half hour in length. Examples include San Gabriel Police Department, mental health evaluation team, and bystander training as examples.
Does anyone have any comments, questions, any input on that item?
So I would think that we need to take one item at a time, and one item, and then try to see how we can focus more. Now, at this point, if it is only a matter of submitting this and then going granularly in later on, I'm okay with it.
So I'm not sure. Are you saying, Commissioner Khan, that we should make it more broad and not so specific? Or
No, I'm talking the other way around.
okay.
Or specific, unless this is meant as a broad sort of, I mean, as a broad agenda that we need to further granularly work afterwards. This seems just okay. In other words, what do we mean by American Heritage Month? What do we mean by a movie? In other words, how do we go granularly to set this up? That probably could come after the approval of the work plan. Is that what is meant for us to do today? In other words, I'm trying to sort of see whether we need to go any deeper into this, or we just leave it here and then we can program, then we can plan afterwards.
Mark, I think Mark has some clarification for us.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. I don't have clarification. I'm sorry to interrupt the discussion, but I wanted to note for the record that Commissioner Herrera arrived at 6:54. I do also want to apologize for disrupting the discussion, but it seems as though we left out public comment in the script, and we should take public comment before we get into the details of whether we approve or adopt of the work plan. So Matthew, if I remember right, you had a comment for
Perfect.
this particular item.
Thank you, Mark. My apologies. So we have two public comments to read. The first one reads, "Good evening, Chair Nunez and Commissioners. I was interested to see your work plan and wanted to lend my voice to your recommendation for partnerships. I would be glad to see not just your commission, but also city staff to arrange to visit our local museums and to apply a lens of diversity and inclusivity to the exhibits that we are able to share with the community. I also hope that you will review a draft of the context statement that the Historic Preservation and Cultural Resource Commission will be considering to help further understanding of our city's diversity and to identify partnerships that we can pursue. While the HPCRC has a list of items that we need to undertake, the context statement being one of them, I am interested in the principle of an annual work plan and echo your call for other commissions to participate in the exercise. While some commissions are seen as reactive, I believe that an action plan for every commission could serve to improve communication and awareness citywide. Thank you for your work, Sonia Lubasic, resident of San Gabriel." The next one reads, "Mr. Morales and here commission, my name is Andrew Salas, chairman of the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, son of the late Chief Ernie P. Tutemez Salas. We are in receipt of your agenda for May 23rd, 2021, and we noticed under community engagement that your commission will be celebrating American Heritage Month and including a celebration of the local Native community. We would like to meet with your commission to discuss our history and the life experiences we have endured to help you understand and engage in this generation's problems of diversity, social justice, mutual appreciation, increased cultural competency, and positive intergroup relations and respect for all others of the San Gabriel community. We can prepare a brown bag presentation for your commission to educate you about the true history and identity of our tribe's lineage and our connection to the San Gabriel community. Please let us know who to contact from your agency so we can participate in your commission's goal for human equity, access, and relations in the city of San Gabriel, our home base. Sincerely, Andrew Salas, Tribal Chairman, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, Kish Nation, and he provided his contact information. Again, my apologies for not reading those at the beginning of the agenda item.
Thank you, Matthew. Mark, maybe can I ask a question? Is my understanding is, you know, while we do want to list some examples, that we don't have to be exactly specific in terms of our work plan, that we do want to leave ourselves a little bit of leeway in our planning. So this is a work plan, but I guess it doesn't have to specifically say, you know, what movie we're planning or who our invited guests will be at this point, that we're using this more as a guide. Is that correct?
I couldn't agree more. I would suggest you be a little broader rather than specific. And just for this item that was just brought up by public comment, there's no reason we need to specifically name the tribe that we're going to honor for that event. We could be more general. And if we get to the point where we hold that event and we want to specifically honor one tribe or one community in our city, we can do that at the time of the event. But for the purposes of the work plan, I think we can be broader and talk about movies in general, cultural events in general, and throughout the rest of your work plan being a little bit more general as appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
And so I guess in that vein, if maybe we could change, you know, for partnerships later on, I would like to see us list kind of community services and historical preservation. But here, if we're going to list community services, that's fine. But can we also maybe put I don't want to say relevant, but you know, we want to make sure that we are working with Mr. Salas and with the necessary groups to help us engage and educate the community. And I don't know what wording to use so that it goes beyond just, you know, we specifically name community services, but that it goes beyond that to whoever the appropriate expert, but I'm sorry, someone can help me with the word, but
We could, Rebecca.
Chair Jennings, this is Director Perez. I might suggest that you could even just remove who you're working with and just say work to determine new ways of engaging and educating the community. And maybe it doesn't even be, you're not even as specific to say through events. You could even leave that more broad, because there might be some other things that the commission would decide. So I think under partnerships, you could possibly include partnerships. Examples may include community services department, but you might be able to just be more broad to say work to determine new ways of engaging and educating the community, or about cultural inclusivity or something like that. So just make it a little bit broader that way. And citing some examples, I think, is a good idea, because we've had those examples, but those could be left a little bit more broad.
So I would like to keep Native American Heritage Month in there as an example, because I would like to see us make that commitment, but definitely agree based on the previous comments that we should remove kind of reference to a particular name until we are able to collaborate with those groups to see how they would like to be identified, and be respectful of that.
Can I also add on that, educating the community? Maybe we can repeat what the HERE Commission is about in terms of educating the community on issues of equity, diversity, social justice, safety, mutual appreciation, because that's what we're doing in engaging the community.
And then the same thing for letter B, if maybe we could be a little bit more broad. So we did speak about inviting a guest speaker educational program to our meetings, but if we want to focus on mental health awareness, then we can put mental health awareness, but I don't know if we need to list a specific group to invite, or, you know, anti-racism efforts kind of as a broad group as opposed to really being that specific. Is that okay?
I think
Yeah,
they're just examples right now, right? For number B, like it, or not number, but for B,
that's B. Yeah.
it just says, I think the overview just says one guest speaker educational program per month during the regular commission meetings, no more than half an hour in length. And then it just has examples under that. I think that's probably fine. Or do you think we shouldn't have those examples?
I think what was being suggested is instead of actually listing the groups that we use the broad, mental health awareness and.
Oh, okay. Instead of saying specifically
instead-
the mental health evaluation team and. Okay,
Right.
I
So
see what
that
you're saying.
gives us
Okay.
a little more leeway to include others or.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I think is good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then should we add the wording, I'm sorry, should we add the wording, et cetera, or what would that et cetera wording would pretty much encompass everything, right? Because that's just serving as an example under BI, right? 1BI.
If we list examples, do we feel like we are committing to those examples?
I don't think we're just listing examples. So if we add et cetera to the end, I mean, should we add examples then? Should we remove the examples, right?
Well, we can do personally if we have, since we're adding these, there may be a whole host of collaborations that we might be doing for half-hour speeches. And maybe we can just entirely take this off and make this as a sub-note for, as like a work in progress time. Similarly, I think we may, in that case, we may need to remove the Tonga tribe because then we're specifically naming that tribe, because if there are more tribes than that, there may be that we need to collaborate and do the work as Chair Jennings suggested before. So
I think we decided
Mark-
to remove that Tonga tribe portion. I'm sorry, Commissioner Greenhoff.
No. Oh, sorry, this is Director Perez. Mark, can I ask some clarification? Would it be helpful for us to, at the beginning, because ultimately this will be a staff report that will go to the City Council, would it be possible for us to include kind of a general statement at the beginning that would say the Commission has chosen to include examples that have been mentioned, so to give the City Council an idea of some of the thoughts moving forward? However, once the Commission moves forward with these items, that scope may change. It may broaden a little bit more. There may be some more other examples that are included. So we can kind of give that descriptor in that staff report so that the council knows that this is not per se all inclusive and exhaustive, if you will. And similarly, the commission or a ad hoc committee may meet and determine that something is really not the right thing to pursue at this time. And so we don't want the commission or committee to feel like you're held to that specifically. So I think we could include kind of that disclaimer, if you will, at the beginning of the staff report.
I agree with that, Rebecca.
I agree with that.
I don't want to guide the discussion, but I would suggest including examples, and you don't have to be specific about the groups or the kinds of events, but the council won't have, the majority or all of council wouldn't have heard this discussion, or would the public. So it would be helpful to somebody who picks this staff report up at the council meeting to hear things like, or to be able to read things like the culturally inclusive movie night and the event to celebrate Native American Heritage Month, because it does give some examples of what you're looking to do. And similarly for the guest speakers, I do think it works to say, speakers on the topics such as mental health awareness or, drug and alcohol dependency, or whatever you're going to come up with, one or two examples of each one. But we could put some wiggle room language in there. It could include, but not be limited to, or something like that. But it would be good to just give a quick idea of what you're thinking about.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
So can we use that language that Mark took, mental health awareness, and we can keep bystander training, or if someone else has a general term I said anti-racism or topics, you know, but if somebody has another term that would kind of be a broad coverage that they'd like to suggest.
Chair Jennings Nunez, I think you might have mentioned anti-bias training, which I think might be general enough.
That was I had mentioned bystander training, which is something different, but certainly we can include that as an example. Any
I
other
like bystander training. I don't know if people think that's too specific.
No, and
I think it's okay because it's an example, right? So I think that's fine. We could just say like experts in the fields of blank, 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 either maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes a better sense than we could just say bystander training, and either as Matthew suggested, we could just say etc., which simply means we're going to leave it, or we could say another relevant or other sort of relevant trainings or sort of presentations rather than training, because we're not going to be able to train ourselves in a half hour, but presentation. So that would be relevant too.
Matthew, does that provide enough guidance for you?
Yes. Yes. So just to be clear, for 1A, we're removing specifically the Tongva tribe so that the discussion can be had as part of that item. And then for 1B, rather than listing the specific departments or agencies that you would like to work with, we'll include I think it was Commissioner Borja mentioned including components of the purpose, community, cultural competency and cultural diversity, and then mental health awareness, anti-racism, anti-bias as examples. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, just better put.
I thought that Commissioner Borja was talking about was 4A. Or am I wrong?
No, that's correct. It was when we talked about working to determine new ways of engaging and educating the community on issues of, and then equity, access, diversity, social justice.
Okay.
And Matthew, if I may add, like Mark was saying, his suggestion was, for example, examples includes and are not limited to that language. I really do like that language. If we can add that to the I, if we all can agree on that, I think that makes it for a more broad, it's not limiting us on what we can or we can pursue.
Not a problem. We can add that verbiage to the beginning. That way it's not specific to a particular subsect. That way it applies to all of those sections.
Good, thank you. So can we go to number 2, youth engagement, or is there further comment on number 1? So number 2, youth engagement, if you want to read through that and then just provide your comments.
And if we may, staff just wanted to point out one item on 2B, that there is the process of the 2 youth liaisons, and then the thought also of the Youth Advisory Commission. So our thought was potentially to look at doing either one, since from what the discussion was, it seems like that the goal was similar, but the outcome or the timeline might be longer on one versus the other. So just to throw that out as you're reading through that.
And I thought, Matthew, that after our last discussion that we were leaning more towards just the liaison instead of trying to develop an entire commission for right now. So I everyone is in agreement, maybe we can just begin the process of starting a youth advisory commission. I think that, I thought we decided that we weren't going to move along those lines right now.
Right, that's correct, yes.
I have a question, please, on the youth liaisons. How are they going to be vetted? When we came on to the HERE Commission, we had to sign a form that we were vetted. How are you going to vet these youth in order to be on the HERE Commission?
That would be part of your action plan. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
No, I thought we had discussed some type of application process similar to what we've gone through. That's what we mentioned at the last meeting.
And we can even maybe use as a template whatever student application they use for the San Gabriel Governing Board for the school board that has 2 student representatives on it. I don't know what the application looks like, but they do have 2 high school members of the school board.
That would probably be a better way to go, because the form that we filled out, had a lot to do with, owning a home and income and what have you, and that's not going to apply to the youth. So certainly if the school board has something, if they're on a board with the schools, that probably would be a good something to use in order to develop, a plan for the youth liaisons for our commission. A good template.
And I think what Commissioner Fitzsimmons is referring to is the financial disclosure forms that we had to fill out. And I don't know if the youth would need to fill that out. They would probably go through the ethics training, just like we had to, but we could add the application form that the school board uses to kind of guide us on what questions to use there.
Right.
So in terms of 2A, I also had a question about 2A, just the language. If instead of putting, if there is a need for additional mental health services, if my preference would be to determine effective ways to discuss mental health services or effective ways to empower youth to discuss mental health services. I'm assuming that there is a need for more mental health services. And so that our survey should try to get at determining what services the youth would like to see. Commissioner Borja, did you have something?
Yes, I was gonna mention, a lot of the schools, they do questions on mental health services because we see it at the schools. And that's something that we can contact the schools to see what information they've gathered in terms of their questions, like on a weekly basis, how often do you feel anxiety? Things like that. So I think that information's already out there. We don't have to do the survey, like is there a need for additional mental health services? In addition, there are some community agencies in our area that probably have data on, how many youth that they're actually servicing. But the idea of, how can we maybe break the stigma, right? How can we reach out to certain cultures that might not, want to go to access mental health services is something that might be important. But I know that the schools do a pretty good job in making those referrals to agencies.
So maybe we could change this to another partnership, more statement of, as Commissioner Barja said, partner with local community agencies and local schools to determine, I don't know, best determine.
Yeah.
No.
No, and what you had mentioned too about the survey of, I think you were saying how best to not access, but right, there's that other part of it. And the other thing too, when we're talking about just school age, we're looking at only up to the 12th grade. What about those that are a little bit older, that in their mid-20s?
This might be an area where the commission, sorry, this is Director Perez. This might be an area where again, we don't need to provide those specifics right now. So we could be a little more broad there to say, you know, that you have talked about wanting to survey youth. There might even be questions about not even related to mental health services. So maybe we can say reaching out to youth in our community, youth and young adults in our community to gather more information and connect with them, or something a little more broad, so that those issues don't have to be determined right now, and that can be left to the committee who's going to be working on that to determine what those specifics are. And then there could also be some research as to what's already existing, so that we're not having to duplicate effort.
Right. I think that's what we had mentioned. I think that's what we had mentioned before, surveying the youth is what their needs were. And then seeing if we can address those needs too.
Yeah, I like the Director Rebecca's suggestion better, because even if we found there are mental issue needs, what is this committee can do?
Well, I think that gets to 3A, is that there are service. So we have 211. We have LA County Department of Public Health. We have San Gabriel Unified School District has services. And so we could partner with those groups to implement some kind of program or some kind of education so, you know, we're not certainly saying that our commission is going to solve mental illness in San Gabriel, but we are saying that we can evaluate what needs there are and try to address them in partnership with other agencies.
So then that means, is the mental health issue the only problem, or can we find more than that? And if, like the Director Rebecca suggested, we just generalize it and then get deeper into it as we keep finding the path to further work with them, or as long as we can reach the youngsters, the middle and the high schoolers, that we could just sort of fine tune our programs based upon time and the expertise that we all have.
Commissioner Brinha?
Yeah, so I agree that, like, I don't think that the mental health part has to be coupled with the youth or in the youth area. Maybe we can even add the mental health part in the community engagement part, because that's part of engaging and educating the community on these equity and access issues. I think I do kind of want to have like something specific on mental health, because I do feel like it's an issue that, you know, I think maybe we can really work to destigmatize, whether that is like having workshops or some kind of events also. I mean, and that could even be in the examples, I don't know. But yeah, so my question also is for the youth part. Do we still want to work on surveying the youth, or do we want to just, maybe we can just say collect data on how to best address the needs of the youth in San Gabriel? So it doesn't have to be there's a survey. It can just be like we can look at what data there is out there.
That might be a way to go to that.
If we can bring that broad in terms of statement, that sounds good. Nothing, I don't know.
Like that too.
Okay.
So in terms of item B, can we then just change that to adding 1 to 2 youth liaisons to the current HERE commission? And then the second would be our letter I. I don't know if we need letter I, but the double I, the suggestion. We would leave 1 and 2. I don't know if we need to include middle schoolers though at this point.
Well, if you're not going to have the youth involved in the mental health, then why do you need the youth engagement, or you need the liaisons? If you're taking the mental health and making it very broad to everyone instead of just the youth, then you really, you know, you're kind of you're limiting yourself, because if you're saying in one sec that you don't want to limit the mental health just to the youth, you want to make it to all people, well, then the youth engagement then is kind of, we're kind of erasing that. So we have to decide, do we want to address the youth as well, or do we want to break it up and have, a broader stroke? Again, this is just the very beginning, and we're just kind of putting words out. We haven't really developed any specific committees yet to start working on some of these programs. But I think if we get too broad, then we're going to kind of lose all of our, our focus. We're going to have to say, hey, we need to focus in on a couple different areas.
Commissioner Goto?
I don't think we're saying that we want to exclude them from the mental health discussion, but I do think we want to hear their voice on other issues that we may not be aware of that are more important to you. So I think that's the piece of it that that for me is important, is to have their engagement, because like we're having this discussion, there may be something very a huge issue among young people that we are not aware of. So I don't think by making the statement more broad that we're necessarily precluding them from having that discussion with, in terms of whether or not there are mental health issues, and, removing the stigma, I think is a huge component. But I do want to ensure that that's not what they're limited to. We do want to hear from them, are there other things that are equally as important?
And I think
so maybe
on all of the issues. So if they really are liaisons on our commission, we want them to bring in the youth portion or engage the youth in all of these different areas that we're speaking of, so that they would really act as a youth commissioner and be part of all of these different areas.
Right. So maybe the wording on that first when you say release the survey for the youth in San Gabriel, mental health services, and you could put and other services and other needs or something, because you're kind of limiting it to mental health, and we want to open it up to other areas. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think Commissioner Bringhall gave some very nice wording a few minutes ago. I don't know, Matthew, if you were able to capture that.
I wish I could say I was, but unfortunately I'd have to go back and listen. My apologies. It was going very fast. My apologies.
But she, maybe you could go back, and she gave some very nice wording that was general and inclusive of what we would like to see the youth participate in. So if we could use that, and as Commissioner Fitzsimmons says, it opens it up to allow them to participate in many different areas. And then we'll leave B as just the 1 to 2 youth liaisons to the current HERE Commission. And then we could leave I guess, because we might not be able to, especially since it is the summer break, it'll be the fall before we can really capture students maybe. And then, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. So I have a note here, and I don't know off the top of my head which commissioner said it, but replacing 2A potentially was survey the needs of the youth, just a simple statement that way. I don't know if that was the intention for that to replace the 2A or not. And then there was I believe it was Commissioner Brenha made the statement of adding potentially a 1C, mental health awareness or something to that effect.
I think, okay, what I said was to add to 1A, because I think Commissioner Borja was talking about adding verbiage to 1A, which included part of the scope of the HERE Commission. So when it talks about determining new ways of engaging and educating the community, to add on issues of equity, access, and all the things that are in the scope of the HERE Commission. So that would be added to 1A. And then you could maybe add a mental health forum or something to I, because they talk about a culturally inclusive movie night, Native American Heritage Month. So it would kind of be another example of how to educate and engage the community.
Wow.
And then we're talking about changing 2A instead of talking about releasing a survey, just to collect data from about the needs of the youth in our community, whether it is through surveying or getting access to available existing data.
I think what that would replace would be B2. So B1 and B2 are similar, which basically means that we're creating a liaison and hearing from the youth. And see, I also feel that listening to this discussion, that the mental health in youth is going to just sound negative. If we want to liaison with them and learn about them and proceed with whatever we can do, that might be a better way to proceed than to just limit and focus only on mental health, because there are other issues that we're not aware of.
Right. So I thought we decided that we're extending it out from just mental health for youth. So I do think to continue to put the word liaison, because that's a position that we want to create.
Yeah.
As opposed to just having someone to come and talk to us about issues, we want to actually create a position that we fill with people. So Matthew, Commissioner Brenhall gave you language for A that hopefully we all agree on, and we're going to continue with the actual position of a youth liaison.
Collaborate.
If you don't mind, Chair, I can read through what the proposal would look like, just when everybody kind of hears it distinctly. So 2 is youth engagement, and then 2A would read collect data about the needs of the youth in the community. And then we would jump down to B, removing the Youth Advisory Commission. So it would read adding 2 youth liaisons to the current HEAR Commission, removing BI, and keeping what would become the new BI, which is currently BII. The suggestion with youth liaisons is as follows. This will enable the youth voice to be heard within the community. II2, each liaison position would be filled through an application process and appointed by the commission. And then there was a note from Chair Nunez Chair Jennings to remove II3. That way that discussion could be had by the group or the commission as a whole that's working on it to determine the age group in which would qualify.
Right. I think we should completely eliminate middle school at this point and just keep it to high school and see how that goes. If we want later, we can implement middle school kids.
I agree.
Yeah, totally. I agree too.
Yep.
Okay. So then we'll just keep it to where it would be II3 would be available to high school students.
I think we're going to remove II3 because we've already stated it at the top that we would have the 2 youth liaisons. Is that correct? What we were thinking? I think if the number 3 is kind of redundant, can we just strike it altogether?
Right, unless we need to put that high school wording. I don't think we do, right? We can just leave it like you're saying, Commissioner Gato.
Yeah, I think as Chair Jennings Nunez stated, we can kind of decide who the youth liaisons will be, whoever is going to work on that, and we don't really have to state it here.
I think that makes sense too.
In terms of removing do we need to leave that in there just to give ourselves time in terms of your timetable? I haven't looked at the timetable for the work plan, but hopefully it reflects that it will probably be into the new year, maybe.
I would say, Mark, if you, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but if you'd be able to provide some guidance as to the feasibility of getting 2 youth liaisons added during this annual work plan, so by December.
Thank you, Matthew. I think it's absolutely something we can do. And you don't need to look at your work plan. It's something that all needs to get accomplished by the end of the year. I think some of these are going to be multi-year things. So if you had the liaisons in place by the end of the year and their first meeting next year, that would probably be a very doable goal.
Okay.
Any other comments or suggestions about 2? Moving on to number 3, community information. I would have one of the same comments we've had in terms of being too specific on 3B. If, implement a resource page on city website for mental health. Like I said, there are a number of resources that aren't listed here, or if we want to add some additional ones, but I don't know if we need to list any.
Right, I agree. I don't think we need to put the I or the BI or the BII one. It's just implement a resource page on the city website for mental health. Or it maybe even not that specific. A resource page, right, on the city website on various topics relating to the scope of the commission.
So to find out, my assumption would be city has resources or city has knowledge of the resources available. So is it just a matter of putting them on website and we are taking that task, or because I see the city or the county sends out all the resource links and so on. Is that what we were referring to, or we're referring to literally referring people or finding resources and kind of making it specific?
I think we're talking about kind of like a centralized location for those resources. Because some people are subscribed to certain newsletters or whatever and get them, but it's just, if we have kind of a centralized location where people can go and just be like, okay, well, here's a bunch of resources for me.
So then would that mean that the resources which are available already, and I'm assuming again, Mark can help us with that, but because I noticed that there are resources that links mostly available. So are we talking about disseminating them to our various media, through various medias, or we're pointing out to certain locations that are locally available for services? I mean, just want to make sure that there are clarifications.
This is Director Perez. I can, sorry, Mark.
Ahead.
I can address during the pandemic, I'll say a time when community services created like an online recreation center where we created some of those resources and pulled some of those resources together. Prior to that, though, I don't know that there was a real cohesive list. And I'll be honest that resource list that we have right now, I think it's inclusive. I'm sure there's more that could be added, but it is largely buried on the website. You would have to know that you were where to find that. So I think what the commission could do is help broaden that and help bring some prominence to that and make that more available and more widely spread, as well as broadening kind of the scope of that. That'd be my suggestion based on what we have currently.
But no, I don't think, Commissioner Khan, that anyone is suggesting that we would directly refer people or that we would get that intimately involved with any particular person. It's really just a matter of trying to provide centralized resources, is the way that several people have mentioned. And even that would be a partnership. And keep in mind also, as Mark said, we're not trying to get all of this stuff done in 6 months. It seems overwhelming what we are listing, but these are just, again, guidelines for what we would like to get done.
So based upon Director Rebecca's sort of summary, what then we can say is that we're going to clarify and work to get that resource list proper, and then maybe find ways to disseminate, whether it's on the website or through social media or directly on newsletters and so on. Is that something that we can do, or?
I think that might be addressed in the next item that goes to the next page.
So it's work with public information officer and city staff to post additional information on city platforms. So yes, once we develop the information that we want to disseminate, we'll be working with the rest of the departments and city staff to do that.
Okay.
So just to clarify, and I apologize that I keep chiming in to make sure I have it correctly, but so 3B would read implement a resource page on the city website on various topics relating to the scope of the commission. And then the commission can look at later what that entails and what the city currently is already offering.
That sounds better.
Yes. Any other discussion on that one?
Yeah, so should we completely eliminate B, since it sounds like CI covers it to a certain extent? Doesn't that encompass it all?
I like the idea of the resource page wording. You know, I don't think we're putting specifically that it's going to be limited to mental health, but I don't know if we only put 3I. I guess that's certainly broad.
I think it depends on if you think a website is social media or not, but I don't think that it really matters either way. Because I think 3 is kind of social media, right? Or C.
Right, it's social media.
I don't think it matters. I mean, but I think establishing maybe a website for resources is not a bad idea, or even using an existing website with resources, but something that's easy to be found, I guess. And
I haven't gone through the city website in a while, but that resource tab should be on the main page somewhere where it pops out. I don't know if that's how it is right now. Director Rebecca, is that how it is right now with the city website?
I don't believe it is directly accessed from that main page. Again, this was something that was developed during the pandemic as kind of a resource for families because they weren't able to get out and get some of those resources. So I think it would definitely be a place for the commission to start and to look at what's there and to see how it can be added to or what items might need to be added to that. But I don't believe it's currently accessible from the homepage.
Yeah, that's kind of funny that we have a resource page, but you have to dig to find the resource. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Now, in taking the suggestion from Commissioner Brenhawk, if we look at the scope of our commission, the fact that we're just saying San Gabriel PD's mental evaluation, that sounded pretty good at last time. But then now I think in retrospect, I'm thinking we need more than just the mental health because there are causes of mental health. So that means if you're going to say, well, mental health, we're going to determine and help with the resources or just at least refer or just expand on providing information, then there is other information like homelessness or other resources or other things that are needed. And I'm especially thinking about now that Los Angeles is offering housing facilities to homeless. Maybe there might be some room for us to collaborate with them and help with the folks who are homeless at the same time, because mental health is not isolated. I think it has to do with other factors.
I thought that we had discussed, Commissioner Borja suggested just taking out I and double I, period.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mhm.
Any other discussion or suggestions for that section?
Good.
We'll go on to accessibility. And this one, I think, captures what we recommended at the last meeting for those who are on the phone. So in essence, the commission is aware that city staff are working to ensure that the city council meetings are accessible. However, the commission urges that the following are implemented prior to the start of 2022, which is translations of city council meeting agenda into Spanish and Chinese. Perfect. Any comments for that section?
That's good.
So 5 partnerships.
I thought we were removing 5A.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would like to specifically state partnerships with the Historical Preservation and Community Services Commissions. As Chair Luschitz said in her comment, there are a number of areas that they are working on that would fit very well with areas that we are going to be working on, and the same thing with community services. So I don't know if it's just assumed because it's part of our ordinance that we'll be working with other commissions, but I think those are 2 that we'll be working with very closely within the city.
Do you think we need to name all of our partnerships though? Because I feel like there are people that we don't even know of, right? That we're probably going to be partnering with. So is that something that we need to call out specifically?
I don't think that one is limiting us to just those 2. I do think that 5B certainly is kind of an example of partnerships, and that one should definitely stay historical preservation and community services if it isn't necessary, again, because it's part of our ordinance to work with other commissions, then we don't have to list that one. We can put a more broad term for A and then use B as kind of some examples. Maybe something similar to what you said earlier, Commissioner Brinhard, in terms of partnering with community agencies, local, again, it might just be a restatement of what's in the ordinance.
I was thinking along the lines of the San Gabriel PD also. I mean, would that be a part of the agency that we'll be working with that we can bring here? Or?
It depends on what I'm sure they
absolutely.
Will.
So then should we be a little bit more broad?
Yep.
On the wording?
Yep, I recommend that.
So then it's just partner with local agencies, community services, and I don't know, local government bodies to facilitate our programs and to facilitate our programs.
Yeah, that's why I'm not sure we have to call it out specifically, because especially if it's going to be so many people, I think, I don't know. I feel like it might be just assumed that we're going to be partnering with other.
Right. Something like seeking partners, once again, seeking partnership with, various agencies to, address the scope of the HERE Commission, right? Or to assist in carrying out the duties of the HERE Commission.
And then list, for example, like in previous sort of items we've suggested, and I think Matthew suggested that we can, as a staff note, they can include the various agencies that we're talking about. That's a possibility.
I guess if the point is to say that we're building relationship between different agencies, I mean, I guess that could be something if we want to, you know, then we could call out for examples. I don't know. I think that might have been the point originally.
I guess my concern, and Mark, maybe you can let us know, is I don't know if the city council will look at our plan and say you just restated all the scope of the commission, and if that is okay, you know, for us to do. I don't know how specific they want to know what we're doing. Again, we're trying to come up with all of this fairly quickly, so it's hard for us to be specific. And as you said, leaving it open probably is going to be better for us.
Yep, Chair Jennings, I agree that I would probably be a little more broad there. I would give the example of the cultural display at a local museum, that kind of thing, as one example. But, and you might list a couple of other examples, like partnering with San Gabriel Unified on you don't have to use the dual language immersion program, but partnering with local groups like SGOSD and others, just to list those, so you're covered if you decide something comes up as part of what else you're working on.
Yeah.
Matthew, did you get any wording out of that?
I think so. So I'm going to go ahead and read it off, and you guys can tell me if it works or not. So 5 is partnerships, and then 5A would be seeking partnerships with various agencies to address the scope of the commission. And then we would create a 5AI, which would be examples include partnering with the Historical Preservation Commission and Community Services Commission, and other local agencies.
Well, or you can take those out and put SGUSD and SGPD or you know, whatever people
Or you
like.
can, I mean, you could leave those in and then just add SGPD
Yeah.
and SGUSD also as examples.
Yes.
And let's add that examples are not limited to part. I like that, like Mark said before.
Great. So 6, data collection. Any input there?
I feel like also along the same lines, like I feel like maybe we can make it more broad and not list specifically the survey questions, because I think that, you know, that limits us as well, but use them as examples. So I think we can just say, oh, it does say possible question. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I guess I read it.
Yeah.
If there is one area, I would suggest you be specific. It's for B and C, so that the city council knows exactly what you're asking for those 2 areas.
6B and C?
Yes, for 6B and C, I would be specific for those. For the others, I do like the sample questions, and you're not limited to those. But if you do want to make that broader, A broader, that would be fine. But for B and C, I would keep those specific.
So Mark, what I would ask then is maybe we have to step back one question to ask what information is obtained during traffic stops, or what demographics are available on the city, so that we know what information we have to choose from. Is that something we would put on this under data collection for us to ask SGPD or human resources within the city?
I would, but I would also go a step further, and I would put some wording in there so that you can decide what information you might want to have us gather if we're not already gathering that. If there's a reason for that to help you do your job in years to come, to gather data on the employees, if that's something that is legal, or through traffic stops, if there's more information we should be gathering to help you make the conclusions or do the analysis that you want to have done.
You know, for B, I think I brought that up, and what I'm interested in is race and ethnicity, gender, location of the traffic stops, time of day, at least those four items. I don't know what other things because I'm not sure if what is gathered, but you know, my what I'm trying to evaluate is whether there seems to be racial profiling that is happening, whether or not, you know, traffic stops are, I guess the reason behind traffic stops, but really it comes to racial profiling is what I'm looking for.
And I think I maybe steered you in a little bit off direction than I was intending. I think they're worded good as they are. I don't think you need to list the kind of information that you're looking for, more that you're specifically wanting information that is gathered during traffic stops or during these suspicious people and vehicles, that kind of thing. And then also put some language in there about that, you know, to determine what is currently gathered and discuss what could be gathered or what information would be helpful. But you don't have to list all of that, because if something comes up that you decide would be better, if you're limited by that, it may hamper you too much. But specifically how we talk about information for traffic stops and information on our hiring, I would think you should be that specific.
So do you have an example of what it should say?
I like it as it's written.
Okay.
And with the
Sorry, I was trying to change it. I thought you wanted us to change it.
Sorry, I was asking you not to change it. When we were talking about A and being more general throughout the entire process, we were talking about being more general. But if there's an area that I would keep it with the specificity, I would keep it for B and C.
Right.
Sorry.
So since Chair Jennings suggested that we are not educated enough on the process that the PD goes through and the city gathers information, in other words, the information on demographics and the city employees and so on. So we could expand on it after we get educated on these two, specifically these two items. So if we keep it broad enough and open, then we might actually be able to tweak this down to the bare workable situation.
I think this would be a great example of where you would partner, because we absolutely could have somebody from the police department here to talk about what we gather and how we gather that when a traffic stop is made. And then you can figure out after that where you want to go from there.
Yeah. And a quick side note, I would like information not only on traffic stops and the demographics of those being stopped, but I would also like to know, out of those people being stopped, how many of those people are being incarcerated and the demographics of those that are being incarcerated and the reasons.
Now, did I understand, based upon our previous meetings, that Mark had suggested that this information at this point is not available, or we are not privy to that? However, that training might, or the presentation might be a venue that we can learn and expand on our sort of scope.
Certainly, if you invited the chief of police to one of the meetings, all of these questions that you have, you can ask him, and he's very open and he will answer each and every one of those. He's very forthright. He does not hide anything at all. And if you want to look at any of the tickets, there's a date and a time where the individual is stopped, where they're stopped. You know, it's all part of the record. Okay. And the chief would be more than happy to you know, explain any of that to you. So I think, as Mark said, when we have, you know, a guest speaker, these are the things that you could ask the chief of police to come, and you can ask, you know, we'll know ahead of time who's coming to be the guest speaker. Have your questions ready, and he will be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you.
So maybe we learn then, and then we can just sort of define our scope a little to the point, and then implement that or pursue working at it.
But for now, it sounds like Mark is saying that the way that we have it worded currently is sufficient for us to move forward.
Chair Jennings, quick note on our area of clarification. Vice Chair Herrera mentioned adding in and gathering information on demographics and those that are incarcerated based off of the traffic stop. Is that something that was wanting to be included in the actual work plan description, or is that something that Vice Chair Herrera, you were intending to be part of the later discussion?
I mean, if we could add that right now, it would be great. But if you guys think that we should, save that, but I would really want that information.
I think you can go under this, since we're keeping it somewhat broad but specific in terms of gather information and analysis for traffic stops. That would be included in the information if it was information that they could provide. So I don't know if not listing it means that we won't be able to get it. If it is available, then it is something that Vice Chair Herrera would like, and so it's something that we would include. But I don't think we have to list it specifically because we aren't listing those other specific things. Mark was saying we don't need to list those other specific things. So I do have one other item that I would like to add, and I don't know where it goes, but at the end of our last meeting, Vice Chair Herrera brought up implicit bias training for the staff. And we didn't capture that on this. And I really feel like in terms of the purpose of our commission, that's kind of number one. And it's a glaring omission. So I don't know which one of these categories it would fall under, but I would want to add that we recommend implicit bias training requirements for all city staff. Are there any other additions that we either spoke about before or that anyone would like to discuss now? Vice Chair Commissioner Godo.
I don't know if this is something that's too specific, but under the data collection, the examples, I feel like section 2 and 3 are kind of redundant, and section 5, I think in terms of what I'd be more interested in is participation levels and maybe barriers to participation. And so I think maybe, I don't know if you want to go into that sort of detail, but if we do want to list all of these potential questions, I was thinking that maybe instead of do you feel informed about the events, maybe have you participated in these events, and maybe a question around what the barriers are, whether it's language or the not having information about I would say not only the cultural events, but maybe city council meetings or city service events. But I don't know if we want to include all of that, or if maybe we wouldn't just list a couple of the potential questions.
I think since it says possible questions include, and we list just a few examples, that the questions that you mentioned can certainly be added, and maybe it'll be represented in our minutes so we don't forget. But maybe we could change the wording at the top to marketing channels to determine what are the barriers, or instead of if there are barriers. I don't know if that kind of gets added.
Mm-hmm. Or even that if the events and activities in the city address the needs of the community. Because I think that's also along the lines of what I feel like I want to send out as well. Like if people feel like there's something that they are needing that isn't available or isn't happening. But I think, because it's possible questions, we can always work on those after.
So changing that to if there are barriers to what are the barriers to engagement, I think would encompass what Commissioner Bringhall and Commissioner Godo want to make sure that we include in the survey.
just clarification for staff. This is Director Perez. I'm wondering the comment about the implicit bias training being missed for city employees. I'm wondering if an appropriate place to include that might be to include that as an additional item under data collection and determine what level of implicit bias training may be given to city employees and possibly expand that. I don't think that was one of the initial questions that was asked by the commission, so we didn't do an exhaustive search on that. So I think we could include that as a data collection, only to then have the commission recommend that implicit bias training be given. If there's another suggestion as to where that should be included, that's fine as well, but that could be kind of a data collection item, only to be expanded, if you will.
I mean, can we just add a number 7 equity or number, can we add a section? If it doesn't, I don't see it under data collection. There are, the police department, it was mentioned before, currently requires implicit bias training. I don't know if there is necessarily a level. There are just some standard implicit bias training workshops that are required by the state, required by different areas. So I don't know if we need to do data collection as it is just a recommendation from our committee. So wherever we would like to put that, and we can be more specific about it later, or actually, I don't even know if we would have say so in what it would look like specifically. Would we, Mark?
Well, I had it penciled in. I'm sorry to contradict you, Rebecca, but I had it penciled in after you pointed that out, Chair Jennings, as number 7. I called it staff training, but I like equity training as well. And I absolutely would appreciate the help in developing that equity training or the implicit bias training. So I labeled it as develop implicit bias training for city staff, and just went as simple as that.
Would it make sense to add it to number 4 and have that be accessibility and equity, and maybe add that as a I guess a section B, or do you think those are two separate?
I like it separate because I think it gives it more weight.
Okay.
I just think it is something that the city needs to have.
Okay.
You can even put it as number 1 and bump all the way. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other additions or comments? Vice Chair Herrera?
Yes, when I was looking at the scope of what we have to encompass or we want to look into and focus, I came across the one that says safety. And right away, the one thing that popped out of my head, into my head, is that we don't have anything there in regards of gang prevention. And I think that's something that we need to start focusing on as well. So if we can add that, I think that's going to be very crucial to youth, at least the youth segment, because people are still going to get, if they're in a gang, I see people riding on the streets here in San Gabriel. I see stuff that I've reported. So there's gang issue, I'm sure. If we can talk to the police department about that, but we have a problem with that. And if we don't address that, I feel people are gonna the minority community is still gonna get arrested and get pulled over because they fit the profile or whatever. But we need to start trying to engage our youth and that on that field as well, to make sure that we're guiding them into the right direction. So if we can incorporate that somewhere, I think that would be great.
So is that something that we can just kind of include under youth engagement, and that we're, I guess, is that a specific that we can work through or develop more later, or is that something that you want specifically listed under youth engagement.
I would like to see that listed under youth engagement. I think, especially with what happened with George Floyd, you know, he was clearly profiled. He fit the description, and they treated him so badly, right? So maybe we can talk to the youth about, you know, trying to prevent them from joining a gang, or how to conduct themselves when they're pulled over for whatever reason, or something along those lines. Or, yeah. So I would like to add that on under youth engagement somehow.
I think for youth engagement, though, I feel like this is their opportunity to identify what are the problems. I think what our Vice Chair Herrera is saying is probably going to be one of the issues that they address. But I would like us to allow them to have that discussion and to identify the issues that, just like we are, that are important to them, versus trying to necessarily guide them in any particular way. I don't know if that makes sense.
And also, we need some education from the chief or anyone who is directly involved with the with the San Gabriel PD in the department, directly involved with the gangs and specifically youth gang handling and so on.
Could that be something that is included under 1B when the chief, if you decide that the chief would like to be present for one of those educational or guest speaker opportunities, that one of those topics could be gang prevention?
I think that would be a good place for it.
Yeah.
I like that, and I will also like to see the data on how many people that are, you know, under the age of 18 that are getting pulled over in the city, or you know, cited.
So that would be part of the information that we hopefully, once we see what information is collected for traffic stops, that we could concentrate on also. Thank you.
I have a thought. Since Commissioner Fitzsimmons worked with the PD closely, we may, because Chief can probably give us a broader picture of the department and its functions. However, specifically, like Commissioner Herrera suggests, that we look into the youth and their issues, or the mental health that we've already talked about. There may be social services person in the PD that we may want to hear from, and so on, like specifically, which has to do with our scope. We may want to get them so that we can understand closely how they operate, so we can expand on that. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
I think that goes under, but it all goes under kind of, we're coming back to specifics where we had broadened it, and now we're coming back to being specific. So I thought we decided we were going to leave it broad so that as we get more information, we can then drill it down a little bit. But
yeah,
those would all be possible areas to explore, but I don't think that we have to put a specific like that in our plan right now, but they'll all be in our minutes. So when we go back to look at where we want to go with these different areas, then we have an idea.
And if I can just add to that, Chair Jennings, in 6 short months, we'll be developing another plan. So anything that we come up with in the next few months that we feel like we left out, it's not like we have to wait a year or two to add that to next year's plan.
Well, and this plan, there are many things that will be continued into the next plan and developed further.
Gotcha.
I feel bad to talk still because I know, like, so it's, I think it's something that we'll probably address later. I don't think we can fit it in this plan also, but I know that Commissioner Khan had mentioned homelessness and housing, and I do want to at some point kind of talk about that as well in an equity and access conversation. And I mean, that can even be in one of our educational things. You can have somebody talk about development and housing, low income housing, and other things around what that means in the city of San Gabriel. So I guess that is already kind of incorporated in 1A. We don't have to necessarily mention it.
As Chair Jennings suggested, we keep these as our notes to follow through as we sort of start focusing deeper into the our plans.
Any other let's see. I'm sorry. So if there are not any additional suggestions, I don't know if we have to go through the whole work plan, Matthew, and read what you have, or if everybody has the general idea, because there are, at this point, we would be able to make one of two motions. One would be a motion to approve the work plan with all of our amendments, and then instruct the staff to submit this work plan to City Council for approval. Or the other motion would be if we wanted to continue discussion into the next regular meeting and have the staff provide additional information. Keeping in mind that our goal was to be able to present this to the City Council for their June 15th meeting. And if we decided to continue discussion, which certainly we can, it would be at our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be at the end of June.
So
I think, go ahead.
So I make a motion to approve the work plan as is to move forward to the City Council for approval.
And I second that.
I think, Danielle, would you take the vote?
I have a quick question. So what Matthew has, is there a way to, like, after he has it written up, to like make little tweaks just in case, or like, do you want to read it as you have it?
That's what I was asking. Do we need to read through the whole thing quickly? It's not that long.
If you'd like, I can run through the edits that the commission has made thus far, if you would like, before someone makes a motion to pass it with the amendment.
Well, we have a motion and we have a second. I think we're now in discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we pass it today, right, which I'm sure we will, I hope so, when would it reach the council's desk?
So they would be reviewing it for their June 15th meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Correct, which means the agenda would go to the council the week prior, or the item would go to the council the week prior.
So Matthew, maybe if you could just give us the rundown before we vote.
Yes, of course. So the everything on the first page was left the same. Prior to item 1 was verbiage to include that the examples are not exhaustive and not limited to those examples. And then item 1AI, we are removing specifically the Tongva tribe. 1B, it is staying the same. And then BI, we are adding in general topics to include bystander training, mental health and awareness, anti-racism, and anti-bias training. And 2, youth engagement.
Matthew, if I can interrupt.
Yes.
If I can interrupt, would it be helpful for him to just read it, or is it helpful for him to pull out what's not there? Would the commissioners here prefer to hear it read?
Do you have it all written down, Matthew, in a way that you could just read it?
I believe that I could read it. I will do my very best to make it flow as nicely as possible.
That's up to the commissioners, but that might be helpful to hear.
Thanks, Matthew.
Sure. perfect. So I'll go ahead and read through it and stop me if I am misstating anything. So I'll start back at item 1, community engagement. 1A, work with the community services department to determine new ways of engaging and educating the community through events. AI, examples include a culturally inclusive movie night and an event to celebrate Native American Heritage Month.
Hey, Matthew, sorry. I think we wanted to add the verbiage in 1A about after it says engaging and educating the community, and to say on issues of, if you go to the,
Going back to the purpose of the year commission.
yeah, equity, access, diversity, social justice, safety, mutual appreciation, increased cultural competency, and positive intergroup relations, and respect for all members of the, so like, just put that kind of here commission thing in the verbiage for 1A.
I think we were also going to strike with the community services department and just leave it broad, work to determine new ways.
Okay.
Matthew, no pressure, man.
Not a problem. I'm happy to do it.
I didn't even think that he was going to be ready just to read the whole changes today. So that's amazing.
And then also on 1AI was an example was to include the mental health forum. So that was an additional example that we're including in there as well. 1B is 1 guest speaker and educational program per month during the regular commission meetings, no more than half an hour in length. And examples include, and my apologies, no more than half an hour in length to complete the, in relation to the scope of the commission, I think was the note there. And then examples include mental health awareness, anti-racism, anti-bias training. Any issues with those? That's something that I missed. 2 is youth engagement. Release a survey. So 2A is collect data about the needs of the youth in the community. And then 2B is adding 2 youth liaisons to the current Here Commission. 2B, the new 2BI would be the suggestion with youth liaisons is as follows. This will enable the youth voice to be heard within the community. Number 2 is each liaison position would be filled through an application process and appointed by the commission. Number 3, community information, events page on website to include events outside of those organized by the city, but which have a community benefit. B is implement a resource page on the city website on various topics relating to the scope of the commission. 3C is social media with subsection work with a public information officer and the city staff to post additional information on city platforms. 4 is accessibility. The commission is aware that the city staff are working to ensure that the city council meetings are accessible. However, the commission urges that the city following the urges that the following are implemented. I couldn't even read what I wrote. My apologies. Urges that the following are implemented prior to the start of 2022. With the note that translations of city council meeting agenda into Spanish and Chinese. 5 is partnership. 5A becomes seek partnerships with various agencies to address the scope of the commission. Let's see. So just bear with me. I'm picking up my notes here.
Okay.
And then examples include partner with local museums and historical sites to develop an exhibit celebrating the cultural diversity located within our community, past and present. And an additional note is to partner with local agencies to determine to help facilitate our program. Examples include partnering with the Historical Preservation and Community Services Commission, SGPD, and SGUSD.
Etc.
6 is data collection. A is survey the community through various city marketing channels to determine what are the barriers to engagement. Possible questions include the following: are these cultural events they want to see implemented? Is what the city is currently offering meeting the cultural standards? Are the services that the city offers meeting the standards of the community? And with a note that do the activities address the need of the community? Are there other services that the community feels the city should be offering? How are you discovering information about what events, programs, or services the city is offering? Have you participated in these events? And do you feel informed about cultural events within the city? Gather information. This is 6B, gather information and analysis for traffic stops made by SGPD and calls for suspicious people and vehicles made. And 6C is gather information on the demographics of the city employees and commissions compared to the demographics of the city residents. And then we added section 7, and 7A will read, add implicit bias training for city staff. And then it goes into the analysis. If you'd like, I can read the remaining portion, or since there are no edits to that, it's up to you.
That's fine. I think we can read that.
Yeah, I don't have any edits. Does anyone have any edits to the analysis portion?
Yeah.
No, so it remains the same. Thank you, Matthew. So now we do have a motion, and we had a second from Chair Khan to, how does it read? Basically to approve the work plan and to send it on to the City Council for review. Danielle, if you could take the vote, please.
Commissioner Borja,
Aye.
Commissioner Brenhall,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitzsimmons,
Aye.
Commissioner Godo,
Aye.
Commissioner Khan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Herrera,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings Nunez.
Aye.
Motion passed by the vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays.
Thank you. Good work. Good. So now the next
Wow, nice job.
work plan is a discussion of the annual work plan action plan. During this time, the commission will determine the best approach for completing each of the items included in the work plan. And I think that by approach, we mostly mean kind of a timetable. Unfortunately, our city staff has put together some recommendations for a timetable for us. I don't think we have to get into the weeds about exactly what we're doing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It does look like there's space to put commissioners' names down though. So is that like, are you wanting specific groups to take responsibility for?
I don't know if it would be better to wait until after City Council reviews our work plan so that we know what we can proceed on and what we might need to modify or add. So maybe we can save that part until we actually have an approved work plan, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, especially our meeting is about a week away from the council's meeting, so it's not too far away. I think that's a good thought to just wait until we hear from the council.
And Matthew has some information for.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Jennings. So I know our meeting is running a little later than usual, so I will try to keep it as brief as possible. And I know some of the information that I'm going to be sharing is not the most exciting, but will help guide you through the process of determining what the best process will be for the action plan moving forward. So like Chair Jennings said, it's just a guide as far as what staff felt was the most feasible to accomplish by a specific date. Most of the deadlines are aligned with one of the regular commission meetings, so you'll notice that in there, as well as what we've picked up on as being of the most urgent in nature, are things that the commission, it seems that the commission wanted to accomplish as one of their major priorities. So we can work through that at the next meeting as well to determine if there's something that you think might need more time, or as you move through it, that deadline changes, that's perfectly understandable. With that said, once it is approved by council, you may determine that there's areas that require a little bit more time and energy, and a committee may be needed to be formed to help tackle that. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide for me. Perfect, and then just one more. Perfect, thank you. So we worked with our city attorney's office to kind of develop this information. So the first section here is what is a legislative body? A legislative body is a commission, committee, or board, or other body of a local agency, whether permanent or temporary, decision-making or advisory, created by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action of a legislative body. So you'll notice that the HERE Commission was created as a resolution, so it is a legislative body. However, advisory committees composed solely of the members of the legislative body that are less than a quorum of the legislative body are not legislative bodies, except that standing committees of the legislative body, irrespective of their composition, which have a continuing subject matter jurisdiction or a meeting schedule fixed by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action of the legislative body, are legislative bodies for purposes of this chapter. And now that I've read all of that, I'll go into the specifics of an ad hoc committee, which will likely be the most commonly used for our purposes, at least at the beginning. There is the concept of the standing committee, but the ad hoc committee may serve the purposes for quite a few of the items. So it's important to note that an ad hoc committee is a temporary committee, and the Brown Act does not apply to this type of committee. So in essence, we're not posting an agenda anytime that an ad hoc committee is together. It's not going to be on YouTube or anything like that. So those are important things to note. And it does consist of less than a quorum of the legislative body. So less than three members or less of the HERE Commission members. And the committee does not have a continuing subject matter. In essence, it has a specific timeline. So once the project is completed, the ad hoc committee is no longer in existence. So for example, once you've established the 2 youth liaisons, there's no need for that. If there was an ad hoc committee for that, there would no longer be a need for that ad hoc committee any longer. So that's important to note. As we move forward, and maybe in the next work plan, that you may determine as a commission that there is a need for a standing committee, at which point that will be a little bit more in-depth, will require a little more public notice and all of the items that fall under the Brown Act. Adam, if you'll move to the next slide for me. Thank you. So the standing committee exists to make routine and regular recommendations on a specific subject matter. They survive resolution of any one issue or matter and are a regular part of the governmental structure. And again, the Brown Act does apply to this. So if, let's say, there was a standing committee on youth engagement as a whole, whether or not there's a regular set meeting time, so the second Tuesday of each month, an agenda would still need to be posted 72 hours in advance at least. So you can see that there's some additional processes that will be aligned with that. There is the option to have a special meeting with that, just as we as we do with our HERE Commission meetings. But our recommendation would be that as you're moving through the action plan and you determine that there may be a need for a committee, that you really look at the ad hoc committee and how that might serve your purposes on its own. With that, I hope that answered some of the questions around committees, and it didn't add confusion to the concept of the committees, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Of course I do. So what would be the difference between the ad hoc committee and standing committee? So because they have got three and less now, is it that the ad hoc committee does what it does and then it comes into present its finding or report or however it forms? Is that called the standing committee, or how does it work?
Sure. So the standing committee and the ad hoc committee will both be under the HERE Commission umbrella, if you will. Again, there's going to be additional steps with the standing committee that the ad hoc committee will not need to go through. So you are right in the fact that it will need to both will need to consist of 3 members or less. But the major difference between an ad hoc committee and a standing committee is that it's going to be a relatively short time frame. So if you know that there's a specific task that needs to be done, and you know it will, once it's complete, there's no longer a need for that committee, then that would fall under the ad hoc committee.
So is that possible that we will have, among us, we will have standing committees, and then all standing committees would work independently and then gather together, or how does it work? Just last one.
Sure. So it is possible that there may evolve into a need for a standing committee on a particular on a general area. But I would say, based off of the work plan thus far, there doesn't appear to be any areas that would require a standing committee at this point. Most of the items that have been listed can be finished or started and completed within a particular time frame. I hope that answered your question.
I'm learning.
So Matthew, in terms of the work plan action plan for tonight, I guess, is it, again, we modified this a little bit. It's going to go for review and then it's going to come back. At that point, can then, based on your time frames, can we then set a couple of priorities and then make those agenda items for the following meeting? I guess I'm trying to figure out the best way to break this down so that we're not trying to work on 10 things at one time, but we prioritize what we want to work on. And then maybe develop an ad hoc committee or 2 for certain items and complete it, and then we move to the next one. What would be your suggestion?
I would say it would depend on how you wanted to approach it. So if you wanted to come up with a formal plan as to having people working concurrently, so breaking up the commission into ad hoc committees or groups that would work on specific areas. So one will work on youth engagement, one will work on community engagement, or data collection, or a combination of those. Then you could certainly do that. And I would say it would be important to note that if there's an area that someone has specific professional experience in, or someone has personal experience in that directly ties in, to kind of make a note or of that as you're going through the action plan. But I don't know that that's something that would need to be done at this meeting. But I believe your question, I'm sorry I didn't address it in my first comment. If there's items that the committee wanted to address as a whole during the next commission meeting to start the discussion, assuming that it gets passed on the work plan, we can certainly make that note now to have it on the agenda as a specific agenda item.
Will we see the work plan before the next meeting? Like, once you put it all together, will that be available to us before the next meeting?
believe, yes, it would be
Well, I guess we'll
able
see
to be
what
sent out
the-
before then.
Yeah, okay. I mean, is it possible for us as commissioners to look at each section and decide where we might want to be and then provide that information to you? And so with our next meeting, once we come back with the finished approved work plan, those people who've identified themselves to want to work in certain areas, we can start at it that way.
My recommendation is we add that as the very first agenda item during the next commission meeting. I believe I'd be able to send out that the final work plan once it's approved from council. Of course, that would be public record as well once it's approved, and then include the action plan. And people can make each commissioner can make a note, and that discussion can be, and we can fill that in at the first item. And again, I hope that addressed your question.
Now, I have a question of Mark. What is your experience in having the council edit and change or make changes to the Hair Commission's proposal or the plan?
I have no experience in it. This is, you are the inaugural
Brand new.
going through this, so that being said, when councils impanel commissions, for the most part, they trust those commissions to do the work that they're under the guidance. So I would think that they're going to consider you all the quote unquote the experts that they appointed for on their behalf. So I would be surprised if they change a lot.
Could they add anything to it?
They could. Will they? I don't think it's likely, but they could.
I have a quick question, Mark. Actually, do we were planning on staff presenting this item to council. Do we want to have or would it be feasible to have a couple of the commissioners and determine that tonight, to have a couple of the commissioners who might be able to answer some of council's questions if they have them, to be part of that meeting? Or do we want to entrust staff to do that? Because staff is trying to interpret all of the information. I don't know if that might be an approach to take, so that the thoughts of the commissioners can be best addressed by a couple of the commissioners.
So I think we're on the same page. We've been working together too long, Rebecca, but I was going to modify that a little bit. I was going to ask the commission to give an informal vote to allow the chair to speak on behalf of the commission at that meeting. I think it would be with our Zoom meetings or whatever you call them, virtual meetings. It would be difficult to have multiple commissioners on there asking questions, but I do like the idea of having somebody from the commission respond to those questions rather than staff's interpretation of what the commission had in mind. So I was going to offer up at the end of this discussion a question of the group to do that. So let's take the opportunity now and answer that question. If it's okay with Chair Jennings to speak on behalf of the commission at that meeting, if everybody would be okay with that.
As long as chair is available and willing, I'm primary person to suggest that.
I agree.
Thank you. And if I just have to check my schedule, if for some reason I am not available, I will let Mark know. And but I'm pretty sure we'll be available.
So,
yes.
so on the
now, yeah.
Yeah, let's choose an alternate. So just using our structure, if Vice Chair Herrera, would that work for everybody? For him, if for some reason Chair Nunez isn't available that night?
I would like to open it up so if anybody else wants to do it. If not, then I'll be more than happy to be there. But I would like to open it up if anybody else is eager to present, just in case as a backup.
I think I would recommend Commissioner Borja or Commissioner Godo, either one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I could do it either way, or Commissioner Godo as well. I mean, if
I vote for you, Jackie.
Oh. Thanks for volunteering. That's right. I'm number one on the list. right? You guys go to me first.
Yes.
Yes, you're always first. So I
And
will
just-
double, if that is okay, then we'll have myself or Commissioner Borja if I'm not available as the alternative. Thank you.
And sorry, just for quick clarification, I think the intent would be that staff would present the item just like staff typically would, just because that's something staff is used to doing. So we can present that item, but then at the end of the presentation, we would make sure that the council is aware that Chair Jennings Nunez or whoever, or Commissioner Borja is available to answer any questions if there are specific questions for the commissioners.
Yes.
Thank you both for doing that.
Chair Jennings, if I may interject for a quick second.
Yes.
Earlier, when we took the motion to approve the work plan, we just omitted the word amended. So just for the record, we need to go back and just make the motion to approve the work plan as amended so that we can be clear on that, if that is okay with the commissioners.
Yes, I thought I heard that from Commissioner Borja, but yes, please add that in there.
As amended, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, is there any other discussion for the work plan, action plan? So at this point, we're waiting for the council to review it, and then we'll bring it back, and agenda item 1 will be to divide the action items based on commissioner interest, I guess is what yes.
Yep.
So now we are moving on to item number 4, commissioner comments and conference meeting reports. So each commissioner may address the commission and public on matters of general information and or concern. This is also the time for the commissioners to report on conferences, meetings, and or events that they have attended. Are there any commissioner comments that anyone would like to share?
Yes, I have something.
Yes, Commissioner Fitzsimmons.
Yes, I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the Parks and Recreation is having their art in the park this summer. It's going to be 8 weeks. It's going to be every week. There's going to be different events. It's going to be at Smith Park and it will be at Vincent Lugo Park. And on week 3, they are going to be celebrating the Native American culture. So that might be something interesting for everyone to attend and listen to see if maybe we hear more about the Native American culture here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do we find a little more information about this, Commissioner?
I'd be happy to email it to you if you would like.
Certainly. Thank you.
Because it has all of the dates and the times and each one of the events that's going to be presented.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Vice Chair Herrera.
I would just like to share that the city has, correct me if I'm wrong, the city has a great graffiti removal team. So if anybody's interested on getting something, removed, just call. I'm not sure who the point of contact is. So maybe Mark or Director Rebecca can help me with that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair Herrera. I appreciate that shout out for our graffiti removal program. We do try to get to things the same day, if not within 24 hours on public property. And you can call our Public Works department. The number's on the website. We have the graffiti removal is prominently on that page. And please do use that number.
I do have 2 comments. One is an agenda item that I would like to add for our next meeting concerning a land acknowledgement. And this is something that the Historical Preservation Commission actually put forth back in October of 2020. And a land acknowledgement, I'm just trying to look at my notes. For those who are not familiar with land acknowledgements are there to recognize the, sorry, I want to get it right. A land acknowledgement statement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects the indigenous people as traditional stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between indigenous people and their traditional lands. And they are now being utilized by many different organizations, government entities to show respect to the indigenous people. And so the Historical Preservation Commission, as I said, back in October of 2020, did bring this as an agenda item, and they are still working to develop a land acknowledgement statement that they would like to utilize throughout the city and different buildings, that type of thing. What I would like to see done is for us to add it to our standing agenda, which becomes a whole process in terms of having to amend a resolution or whatever the wording would be, but that we would read a land acknowledgement statement during each of our meetings. So I don't know if that is possible, but I would like to bring it forth as an agenda item. Obviously, it will take some coordination, and this is where the Historical Preservation Commission and the work that they're already doing with some of the tribal groups in this area would be very handy. As that comment came at the beginning, we want to make sure that we are respectful in whatever we create and that we're consistent with what the Historical Preservation Commission is going to do. But I would like to bring that as an agenda item for our next meeting. And then my second comment, it's just a reminder or an acknowledgement that 2 days ago on May 25th, it did mark the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. This commission came into being because of that action by the murder of Mr. Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin, ex-officer Derek Chauvin, while 3 other officers looked on and are now being charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. So it is just a reminder that we still have a lot of work to do. You know, our commission is here to ask difficult questions and to facilitate difficult conversations. And I hope that as we continue that you know, we'll see that as a direction that we go into.
Gotcha.
Anyone else with comments or? If not, the HEAR Commission shall be held, the HEAR Commission meetings shall be held on the 4th Tuesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Staff and the commission will discuss future meeting dates, meeting times, and meeting locations. The next regular commission meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Otherwise, we adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:49. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.